Tamara from Olardi, and we're going to talk about canning tomatoes. In order to can tomatoes, you will need tomatoes. I have about 10 pounds of tomatoes. I have a variety, heirloom, I don't even know what kind of tomatoes I have, got them at the farmer's market. There's 10 pounds, and this will can about 3.5 quarts of tomatoes. The rest of the materials you will need for canning, you will need some lemon juice, and we'll talk about why later. You will need 2 pots for heating your lids and rings, and you need to have a little extra boiling water for filling your jars. You need jars or cans and lids. All of these items are available on Amazon.com, Target, Walmart, pretty much anywhere. But the main thing you'll need is a canning kit, and you can get this on Amazon, any of your big box stores, a lot of hardware stores. It's a giant pot, and inside the pot is a rack where your jars will be placed to then enter the water, and a funnel to help you fill your jars, a spatula that helps you get the air bubbles out, a magnet that helps you get the hot lids out of the water, and we'll show you how to use this in a few minutes, and a jar lifter that helps you lift the hot jars out of the water. One of the most important steps you need for canning is everything needs to be very, very clean and sanitized. So your jars need to be clean and sanitized. You could dip these in boiling water. What I find easiest to do is I put my jars in the dishwasher and with all my other dishes, and I ran a load this morning, put it on heat dry so they stay nice and warm, and I have clean, warm, sanitized jars that I'm going to leave in here until I'm ready to use them. One of the first steps you'll need to do to can tomatoes is to peel and seed your tomato. I have a pot of water here that it's boiling, and we're going to use that to, I'm going to demonstrate how to peel and seed a tomato. And I have the canning jar here, or the canning pot here, filled just over half with water, and that is working on a boil. This pot takes quite a while to boil, so I like to set this on, get it going while I do all my other preparation. Okay. An easy way to peel tomatoes is to take your tomato, you have a pot of boiling water, just score with a knife a little X right at the bottom, drop it in the water, tomato, an X, put it in there. I don't even know what kind of tomato this is, I just thought it looked cool, an X. After about 15 to 40 seconds, it depends on the size of the tomato, you will see the peel start to split a bit. Dump it in ice bath. I'm going to leave that big guy in there for a few more seconds. You can take it, and the peel just peels right off nicely. I ended up setting a strainer here over this bowl because I wanted to save some of the juice, but that's totally optional. You want to take the core out. Just take a knife. Take out the core. You could then can the tomatoes whole. I don't really care about whole, half, quarter, so I'm just going to cut it in half. It's a messy, gooey job. And I squeeze it to get the seeds, some of the seeds out. Again, I'm not uptight about getting every single seed out. There we go. You drop them in your bowl. After I peeled and seeded the tomatoes, I had a bunch of tomato juice in the bowl. This is totally optional, but since you have to add liquid to the jars with the tomatoes, I'm going to take the tomato juice, pour it into my water pot, and bring it back to the boil before we get ready to can. One of the things you need to do is the small pot that I showed earlier. I have it, it's a little more full than I need it to be, but I have it just back here on a simmer. And I take my lids and my rings, and I have 2 different size mouth jars, which is why I have 2 different size lids. But you stick them in the water. This sanitizes them. But more importantly, the waxy edge here is what needs to get hot, because that's actually what's going to make your seal for your canned tomatoes. So you just kind of put that in there. It's hot. Doesn't even need to boil, just simmer. Now we're ready to actually can the tomatoes. I just grab these out of the dishwasher. They're still nice and warm. And I said earlier this might do 3.5 quarts, and I have about 4.5. I have 4 quart jars and 1 pint jar. I like to always have an extra jar. It's hard to determine exactly how many tomatoes you have, so it's a just-in-caser. Take your funnel that came with your canning kit, clean hands, to load the tomatoes. Shove them in there. And I used different colored tomatoes this time just because these tomatoes were fantastic at the farmer's market. You know, so that's why mine are yellow, orange, and red. But you fill it to about a 1/4 inch, which would be that top rim, the top ridge for the screw. You fill the actual tomatoes to that level. You kind of squish them down. Maybe 1 or 2 more. Squish. Maybe 1 more. And you keep going. All right, now we have our pot of tomato juice and water. And again, you could just use plain hot water or all tomato juice. I mixed. You're going to need to make the tomatoes slightly more acidic, so I use organic bottled lemon juice. You'll add 2 tablespoons for a quart and 1 tablespoon for a pint. And it will not change the flavor when you open these later in the winter. It's just to make it more acidic. It helps prevent it from going bad. Lemon juice is all in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fill the jars with this hot liquid, and you want to come up to, you want to leave 1/2 inch of headspace, which is just between these 2 ridges. So it'll be right smack in the middle, approximately. That's called headspace. Using your funnel. This one doesn't need very much liquid at all. Not once full, but you take your little spatula, really shove it in there, and you'll see the liquid goes down because it's getting into where all those air pockets were. You do that for each jar. Fill it with the hot liquid, really scooch it down, and you want to be sure the tomatoes are covered with liquid. I've now filled my jars with the hot liquid, and I'm going to take a towel. You just want to make sure the rims are, they don't have to be spotless, you just have to clean them off so that the lids will make a nice tight seal. And then with your magnet from your canning kit, hot. This is a narrow mouth jar, so I grab my narrow mouth lid and the ring. Sometimes they're not connected in the water, but it is. It's hot. And you put it on. Tighten it firm, but not crazy over tight. Lid, hot lid, and the ring, and tighten. You do it for all the jars, and then we're going to can them. Now we're ready to can or process our jars. So the water bath is boiling. Take off the lid. We carefully place the jars on the rack. There. Okay. And then you carefully lower it into the water. You want it to be covered with about 1 inch of water. I'm going to put the lid back on. I'm probably going to boil a little bit more water and add it in there because that's not quite 1 inch, but that's good to start. And you'll boil these for about 45 minutes. You take off the lid. If it's really steamy, you could wait a minute or 2, but this is just fine. You take your jar grippers that came in the canning kit, and you really have to squeeze hard so you don't drop the jar. That would be bad news. And, oopsies. There you go. Then you let cool on the counter overnight, and you'll start to hear little suction-y noises in a few minutes. And to test to make sure they're done is you'll press on the top. And if you do not hear anything, I hear nothing, that's good news. If you heard something like this, then it's not sealed. And so you would have to use it immediately or put it in your refrigerator. But these are sealing just fine, and we're good to go. So that was canning tomatoes.